We are farmers.
Oh yeah, I've always been interested in not only cars, but pretty much anything that moves under motive power of some kind. My name is George Camp. I'm a retired automobile designer who had a 38-year career at General Motors Design. I found cars to be very interesting to me since the time I was a little boy. My father encouraged me to learn the makes of the cars, to recognize them. He'd say, "What kind of car is that?" We drilled, we learned them. So I got to the point, I'm sure, that it bothered my mother that we'd be riding down the road and I'd be saying, "There's a 31 Chevy, there's a 47 Buick." Start reading all the car magazines and Hop Up and all those hot rod magazines and so forth. And you find these little ads in the back, in the small quarter of a page or eighth of a page ad that says, "You can be a car stylist, art center school in Los Angeles." I did have an art teacher in high school who was a car buff. He had a Clasiq Packard. He liked cars. He'd bring me his copies of Road and Track magazine and encouraged me. Whereas most teachers would say, "What are you doing? Why don't you do something respectable for a living? You don't want to be a car designer. You're always drawing cars on the margins of your papers." So it was encouraging to have someone say, "This is a great thing, if you like doing it, go for it." So I'd rather try and go to Art Center if they'll accept me. So I applied there, because I knew that they were strong on car design. It was all there. If you were a car nut, California's the place to be. You picked your major right off the bat, it wasn't like 2 years of liberal arts and then it wasn't like that at Art Center. It was very profession focused, as anyone who went there could tell you. And it was a grind. The car companies sent people out to interview. Chuck Jordan and a man from personnel came out and looked at our portfolios, interviewed us, wanted to see your thinking. So he went through a big stack of 8x10 newsprint ballpoint idea sketches, just roughies, just crank them out. What's your ideas? What are you thinking? But when you hired in, you were put in a studio called Design Development, which was casually referred to by most people as the school. It's orientation. It's really funny when you go in there, you think you're something because, I'm just a high-shot designer out of school, but you don't know the history of the guys you're working, the older guys. You think, they're old guys, what do they know? You find out later what wonderful histories and contributions they made and how good they were. You see them as managers, not as designers. When I got there, there was actually a mid-engine sports racing car being done by the guys that were in there then. So, it gets your enthusiasm up. We had a truck project. I did a pickup truck that Chuck Jordan liked a lot, so he assigned me to the truck studio because he had come up through the truck studio himself when he was a young designer, and he liked trucks. I was very enamored of sports racing cars, chaparrals and things like that. So I sat and did a little sports racing car that's sometimes you just want to be able to exercise your imagination a little bit because it frees you up your thinking for the next working project. In 1968, I got married and we got back from my honeymoon, and there was somebody else sitting at my desk in the truck studio, and they said, "You've been transferred to Pontiac." It happened while I was gone. So I packed up my stuff and moved upstairs to Pontiac. It wasn't entirely a shock to me because when I was hired in design development, the studio chief in there at that time was Bill Porter, and when I moved to Pontiac 4 years later from truck, Bill was now the Pontiac chief designer, so I was working for Bill Porter again. He's a great teacher. You just can be a sponge and absorb from him so much. Yeah, it was wonderful. I was in Oldsmobile for a few years. Then I moved to Cadillac. I worked for Wayne Cady in Cadillac. Yeah, that was when we were doing the so-called muscle-back Seville, the one that had the kind of the razor-edged Clasiq Rolls-Royce style rear end on it. Very different. Then after I don't think I was in there maybe 2 years or so, I went to the advanced area. After years in production studios, you start to get a little, you get pretty conservative, you know what will work and what won't, and you don't step outside the lines much. So I thought a stint in advanced would be very good for my views mentally. Worked on different things. At one point I was loaned out on the Corvette program, the C5 Corvette, which came out in 1997. But was started back in 89 or 90. It gestated for 7 years, which is very unusual, but it went through some difficult times. So they had this, they called it the Skunk Works informally, in the basement. It wasn't the regular studio. And he had a selected small group of people down there in the basement doing this work. I went to the GM Motorama at the Waldorf Astoria in New York in 1953 when the Corvette was introduced, the very first one, as a show car. And I didn't see the other cars that day. I spent my whole time watching that thing go around on the turntable. I just was crazy. And I've been like that about Corvettes ever since. My first car that I owned was a 64 Corvette. So, and since I was a Corvette fan anyway, that made it especially delightful for me. It's hard in the sense that all eyes are upon you because it's a sacred assignment, really. But you have to have the heritage so that anybody who looks at the car knows it's a Corvette. It can't be a Jaguar or a Ford GT or a Mustang or anything else. It's got to look like a Corvette, not anything else. The tradition has pretty much been that the vice president, which would be like Harvey Earl or Bill Mitchell or Virgil Exner or Gene Bourdonnais or guys like that, they are credited with the designs. Well, they were responsible for them, but they didn't pencil them, they didn't draw them, they didn't think them up, they guided them. So how do you nail that down? It's not black and white, it's not clear cut. And it's certainly not when you're in school sketching cars, you're not thinking about, oh boy, I hope I get to do a grille or a hubcap or a tail light, but sometimes that's what it is. But whatever it is, you're contributing and moving the ball down the field. That's the important thing. Even with the technology we have today, with computers and so forth, and all the wonderful programs that could be helps to you in designing. And you need to still have that imagination. And I personally think you should still have a love of automobiles. I think that to be successful at it, you need to love the subject you're dealing with. I tried to save a lot of my work. I didn't know whether I'd ever get it out of there or not, but I kept it because I just thought it was wrong to just throw everything away that you're doing. And not just me, but other people that did even much better work than I did, their stuff was getting thrown in the trash too. It was made clear to us that the work we did was not our property, it was the property of the company. So generally what would happen, I think, when you get transferred from one studio to another, usually you ended up leaving the stuff you did there in whatever studio it was, stayed in a drawer like these flat files in the back room of that studio, and you moved on. And eventually when they needed the space in that studio, they just dumped the drawers out. So that's what usually happened to it. It wasn't that you were asked to destroy it yourself. It just got left behind. And then it got discarded because it meant nothing to anybody. Well, there was the legal way and the illegal way, I guess. You could, under some circumstances, be given a permission, a package pass to take something out, but that was rare, depending on circumstances or the reason why you needed to have it. But most of the stuff that people kept was spirited out. Quietly and undercover, sort of. Usually it could be done by either rolling it up and sticking it under one's coat or something of that nature. Or I've been told that it could be hidden inside an umbrella. I don't know, I never tried that one. Sometimes, if they had to borrow a car or something for display purposes, it could be hidden in the car and then taken off the premises. I mean, I'm giving away all the secrets. I don't think any of that stuff goes on anymore because everything's in the computer now. It's a different world, so who knows? And they may come back and arrest me because of this.